Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Exploring the Void. And in this episode, it's a big one because we are finally going into planetary. Yes, my dear Kerbinauts, we are going to Duna because we can, and that's the only reason why. We've got all the science we need from the Minimus orbits, etc, etc. So on screen right now, you can see me constructing our craft that is going to get us there. It's got all the science units we've currently got unlocked, so we can grab all the necessary science from hopefully one biome of Ike and one biome of Duna, and of course all the orbital shenanigans from high and low over each celestial body respectively. So it's fairly small. It's got a little cheetah engine because it's got a decent thrust and isn't particularly heavy, and it's got a better efficiency than most engines we've got unlocked, besides our nuclear engine, which I decided not to use due to its abysmal thrust weight ratio, and for the sake of video time I decided to not mess around with incredibly long burns. But that's the construction of the transfer ship and, well, basically mothership complete, and now we can continue with our lander. It's going to be a small little one crew command pod that Bob is going to go down in so he can do all the science. He can reset it now, because this is a science playthrough. He will have the stability assist and all the locking. He can lock onto all the nodes that's available on the nav pool. This isn't possible on in career playthroughs. You need a pilot for that. He also can't make any he can't make maneuver nodes, so we're just gonna add a little antenna there at the back. You can see that on screen. Impeccable timing, yay! I got it right. So that he can communicate with the mothership, and either Jebediah or Valentina can kind of guide him through how to make a maneuver, or Jeb can do it himself. That's so it's got some parachutes for landing on Duna. It needs a lot because, well, Duna's atmosphere is pretty thin at best, so you need a lot of parachutes to slow down, and on top of that, a small puff from the engine just for that little bit at the end to make sure you come to a nice gradual stop. So now that's our mothership and lander complete. Now we're just strutting everything up, make sure there's no wobbliness, because that'll make for a nasty ascent from Kerbin. And now just sticking that in a big gold fairing, closing that by the launch escape system, which is, for all intents and purposes, pretty useless because the chances of the rocket failing is 0. And if I do make a little blunder and have a horribly inefficient ascent, I can just hit the revert button. But, so really it's just there for aesthetics, and it just helps the crew feel a little bit safer. And that's that. We've got our little 2-stage rocket to get us into orbit. Well, I say little, but it's fairly large. It's got 2 of those Pollux solid rocket boosters, thanks to the Making History DLC pack, which you can purchase on Steam or from the websites and that. So now we're going to get our launch clamps so that it just doesn't wobble too much on the launch pad. And now that's that. So now we can just quickly fade across to where I'm gonna plan the transfer window. So I'm using Kerbal Alarm Clock to transfer to plot the transfer window from Kerbin to Duna. So basically, if you were to draw a line from Kerbin to the sun to Duna, that angle, as you can see on screen, is approximately 45 degrees. Now we can fade across to our launch and lift off of the Duna device. I don't think I mentioned that. Maybe I did. But anyways, now just speeding up the footage so we can have a slightly better frame rate and make the launch a little less tedious, because my computer sucks and the frame rate at launch was like 14 frames per second. You should be able to see the frame rate counter on the top right corner of the screen if you want to. And now the #1 tool for making YouTube videos is camera tools, so you can get beautiful shots like this, where you have those solid rocket boosters separating. Oh, isn't that beautiful? That lovely sonic boom. And now getting on with the rest of the ascent, using the mainsail engine because it's got fairly good thrust and fairly good efficiency. At sea level, in a vacuum, I would have preferred to use the skipper engine, but with testing I found that it didn't quite have the thrust-weight ratio I needed. So there you can see a second mainsail engine, which is going to propel us into orbits. It's got, I think the skipper engine has something like 10 seconds more of efficiency. But really, the mainsail was necessary to get this large of a payload in orbits. And then, right there, you can see the flames licking the side of our spaceship as it blasts its way through the atmosphere at very high speeds. And there, our apoapsis is now out of the atmosphere, and we can ready to make our maneuver to circularize around Kerbin and get into orbit so that we don't come crashing back down again. And we can warp up to there now, so we can do our circularization burn, also using the mainsail. I had just enough delta V. That's cutting it fine. Not the first time in this video. So, spoiler, whoops, I should have said that at the beginning. Anywho, now we can get Valentina across to our lander, so that she can dock it to the mothership. That's why I've got 2 pilots along, so that one can be in control of the lander and one can be in control of the mothership. But it's really not necessary. Bob could have done the same. I think Bull too, he's an engineer. So Bob's our scientist, Jebediah and Valentina are both pilots. But now we can use the RCS system on our mothership to get ourselves docked with that, which took longer than expected, but it would have been faster to use the engine, but I think for the sake of realism I decided to do this. In hindsight I should have probably used the engine, but we'll do that next time. So now getting close to where we're going to dock. There we're going to target the... Oh, I should have said this. I missed it. Whoopsie! I'm not good at voiceovers. Bear with me. Oh, that's... No, whoops. Now we can do our maneuver, plan our maneuver to get to Duna. But as you could have seen, as you saw in the build, we've got 2 drop tanks on the side. Now, what could this possibly be for? Well, they are to get ourselves just to the edge of Kerbin's sphere of influence, and then we can drop those back into the atmosphere by doing a quick retrograde burn so that our periapsis enters Kerbin's atmosphere. We can drop those drop tanks and then get our periapsis back up. So now we're doing that burn to get our apoapsis up to the edge of Kerbin's sphere of influence. We do pass this slightly, you'll see in a second, but then I just quickly do a retrograde burn and we're back in the sphere of influence. Now, this didn't quite go as well as the maneuver node predicted. But it's close enough. So now we can just warp up to the apoapsis so that we can do our retrograde burn to get those drop tanks back to Kerbin. So hopefully not landing on somebody's house, which would lead to a very nasty surprise. Don't worry, the insurance will. The Kerbal Space Center's insurance will probably deal with that. We've got pretty good lawyers. Anywho, now we can get our second burn underway. We can plan that, which would have been more efficient at periapsis, but since our first burn didn't quite go as predicted, we needed to move it slightly, and a perfect encounter. I was really proud of this. Usually you need to do a second, just a correction burn around the sun or Kerbal, whichever you prefer, just to get the intersect with Duna we require, or just fine-tune that that encounter. But now we're getting an encounter with Ike, because we're going to do a gravity assist, which I'm not pretty sure. I'm not exactly certain how well it helped, but let's just, for the sake of just hoping it actually helped and didn't hinder us and waste fuel. We'll just see. So this was because I wanted to get around Ike first, so that just to ensure we had the Delta V basically to land there, because on my other 4 attempts, because my computer is completely incompetent, if you like the alliteration there, and meant that once I got there, it would just decide, nope, I'm stopping the video, and that's that. But anyways, now our burn is underway, and we've got a brilliant Duna encounter and subsequently Ike encounter. But this was a slightly higher inclination than predicted, but maneuver nodes aren't 100% correct. They just basically tell you this is approximately where your orbit is going to end up, and if you want to do fine maneuvers, you can, but I honestly couldn't be bothered. It was close enough for me, and now around the sun in orbits, we can do our first set of science experiments: the Mystery Goo barometer, the Science Junior Bay, and thermometer. Then Bob can get out, take all the data, reset the experiments, and hop back in just after doing an EVA report, and then we can warp on to our Duna encounter and subsequent encounter and hopefully helpful gravity assist with Ike. And then I already planned the maneuver node. You probably saw that on screen a few seconds ago, but now we can go ahead and perform our circularization burn around Ike. This was gosh, I have no idea how much meters per second of Delta V this is, because the previous screen is minute and low quality at that, even at the full preview render. So of course we just undershot this slightly, or overshot it, and now just need to warp back around to the periapsis to form just one more to get in a nice circular orbit, because I'm somewhat OCD. And there we are. Now we can get ready to do some more science. I forgot to do science high over Ike, but slow over Ike and landing on Ike is pretty decent. And honestly, we didn't need that much science, because there are still numerous other candidates in the Kerbin system to go and visit and steal some science from. So now, with that done, we can transfer Bob over to our little Mark 1 lander pod, and then detach that, just rearrange the staging stack, making sure nothing gets ejected that we require for our Duna landing. But there we go, just warping around. I'm going to land on that little greyish bit over there. It seemed kind of flat from the map screen, which thankfully it was, because Ike is a somewhat pointier moon with numerous mountain ranges and very few plains, unlike Minmus that has these very, very big flat regions. And now we've got the Kerbal Engineer Redux readout up there on the top left. It's the big thing, you can't miss it. That's just going to tell us basically when to do our suicide burn for maximum fuel efficiency, which is a little broken now. So I basically just took our time to impact and suicide burn length and just like waited until my time to impact was the length of the suicide burn and started burning then. And now, as you can see, we have landed and Bob can disembark, grab that science, go back in the pod to do any a crew report, which I forgot to do, and Bob can then step on the surface of Ike, complete Kerbal style, and then take a surface sample, EVA report, and then plant the flag, which is probably the most important part of the mission, so you can tell any other aliens that you have beaten them here, and while we're here, we might as well like Ike. And now Bob can hop back into his pod and warp around, wait for the ship to come round back again, so we can encounter it, dock with it, and head over to Duna. This ascent and rendezvous I completely butchered, and as you can see with every subsequent correction I made, I went further and further away from it, wasting a lot of fuel. So please don't take this as an orbital rendezvous tutorial, because that is not what it is, and if you do this you will almost certainly run out of fuel. So yeah, I'll just fade across to the actual docking, because this took about 10 minutes to do. And through the magic of the Kraken, we have teleported across, and we can do our rendezvous. I'm terribly sorry I have to do that. And our Duna rendezvous wasn't any better, so I should probably practice that. But we're docked, and that now this would have been made more efficient if I had just landed on Duna first, so I can get rid of those external tanks and parachutes, which are actually really heavy. But I knew I had enough Delta V to land on Duna, and I wasn't exactly sure if that single little fuel tank and engine was enough to land and get up off of Ike. But as you can see, we've now done our Duna ejection burn, just like what we did in episode 3, I believe, where we got back from the Mun back to Kerbin. So similar story there. And now we're doing an aero brake, which was probably not what NASA would have done, but due to horrible fuel efficiency and constant wasting of it, it was absolutely necessary. And now Bob's a brave Kerbal. He just got out the middle of Duna's atmosphere to do some EVA reports and do the other science canisters, do the other science stuff. Yes, great sentence there. Great sentence. Now warping up to the apoapsis so that we can raise our periapsis so that we do not meet a fiery and explosive demise. And then going back down to the periapsis, you see I've just made a maneuver node there so that we can get into a circular orbit around Duna. I believe it was something like 60 by 60 kilometers, which is 10 kilometers above Duna's atmosphere, so there's some room to maneuver around it so that we certainly won't get in the atmosphere. And now with that done, Bob can go back into his little pod again so that we can land on Duna. And just once again rearranging the staging stack, because I just mushed all the landers stages into one thing to make sure that no other subsequent stages from the rest of the rockets would be there and accidentally activate the landers, engines or parachutes or whatever. So now just extending those landing legs, doing a small little burn, and then entering Duna's atmosphere, which is abysmal and incredibly thin at best, which is why 6 parachutes are not overkill, but actually a little bit too little. And there I found a lovely shot, so just making that might be the thumbnail of the video. And there we go, that's that. Parachutes fully deployed, very close to the surface. I was a bit scared there that it wouldn't go, and certainly some eyebrow raising stunts from Bob if Kerbals had any eyebrows to raise. And now in real time, just to see what speed I'm landing at, and no, don't fall over. Oh, thank goodness. Once again, eyebrow raising stunts from Bob. That certainly had mission control at the edge of their seats. Hopefully you're at the edge of your seats as well. But now we can extend the ladder, turn off the SAS, because it's just slurping away at our power, and get ready to do some more science from each of those, which I packed onto the ladder as well. And Bob can once again fall off the ladder, Kerbal style, and plant a flag in Duna's Midland Sea, I think is this biome. Yeah, and then doing our surface sample and EVA reports. Then I started looking for a surface sample, compliments of breaking ground, which I think I saw one at one point, but it was a little far away, and I didn't feel like Bob should walk all the way there, and then can get rid of those parachutes because we don't need it. It's just dry mass now with some lovely explosions. And now getting back up from that, just monitoring those side tanks to make sure they're empty now. With these I used the fuel lines so that they fed into the center stage, the center fuel tank over there. So that meant that when they ran out of fuel, that center tank was still completely full. And once again, this is a horrible ascent and rendezvous. Please avert your eyes. It is yeah, not very good. And just constantly wasting fuel and getting practically nowhere, but at least we got circularized, and now we are going to warp around until we get a close enough encounter with the mothership. This took some time because I missed the closest one, then I had to wait a very long time to make sure that they were close enough again. I think we got an encounter at first of about between 10 and 5 kilometers, that's for sure. Not entirely sure of the exact distance, but there we go. Now we can go retrograde relative to our target, burn off any velocity we have relative to it, and then just point toward it and activate the engine, which is not the most efficient way. A more efficient way would have been to make a maneuver node and play around with that, but I couldn't be bothered. Now we're getting pretty close, and the rendezvous should happen before your eyeballs in a few seconds now, and there we go. There's the mothership using its RCS fuel instead of the precious liquid fuel and oxidizer, which we have fairly little of. So now once again we're I've hit a blank. Give me a second. Targeting the docking ports on either a ship, and then making them hold the target node on each one, and then going close, make sure they're aligned. Once again, because I'm OCD, and we are docked. And now we can just transfer any remaining oxidizer, liquid fuel, and monopropellant from the lander to our mothership, because don't want to waste fuel, guys. We've wasted enough already. Now Bob can grab all the science he gained from the pod and put it in our big Mark III command pod. And now just leaving that stage, floating around in Duna orbit. And now we can get our Duna to Kerbin transfer once again using Kerbin alarm clocks transfer window planner mod. So that once again, if we were to draw a line from Duna to the sun to Kerbin, that line would that angle that would form at the sun would be about 45 degrees once again. But Kerbin has to be behind Duna due to Kerbin's higher orbital speed and orbital period. So now we can fade across back to our lander, orbiter transfer, and get a maneuver made so that we can get back to Kerbin. Now, as you can see, we didn't get a pretty good encounter with Kerbin right from the start, so we're going to have to make a orbital correction burn around the sun just to make sure we get an encounter with Kerbin's atmosphere so that it can help slow us down. Now here, just once again doing some science high above Duna, because we missed that when we came in, and unfortunately I forgot to get it from high over Ike. But with the science done, we can warp out to the ascending node, which was conveniently situated very close to our ship, so that we can get our inclination relative to Kerbin to 0, meaning that subsequent maneuvers would be fairly efficient. And there we go, we got an encounter and a cheeky mine assist, which we averted. Lovely. I tried to get on the light side of Kerbin, which made for better videos. I think we did land. Yeah, we did land on the light side of Kerbin, so that's, yay, great for videos. But with that maneuver done, we can warp over to Kerbin and re-enter its atmosphere. Now here, yeah, don't get warp happy, because as you will see in a second, we went past Kerbin, meaning we had to waste fuel again. And luckily we had just enough to get in orbit around Kerbin, and then just using the RCS fuel, because I guess why not, to get our periapsis to the desired height of about 30 kilometers above the surface. And now we can get ready, decoupling the fuel tank and engine at the last second so that we can get some lovely fireworks. There we go, and now I move the camera away. Yay, wonderful. I'm a great videographer and YouTuber. Yeah. So, due to the high re-entry heating that I put on, I think it's 120, it's the maximum. It meant that our ablator on the heat shield went, in my opinion, dangerously close to low. It went dangerously low, but I also added very little ablator because it's really heavy and it can save a lot of delta V. But now we've slowed down enough, the drogue chutes have deployed, we can get rid of that heat shield because now it's just deadweight that's going to make us faster when we splash down. And now the main chutes have deployed. I've cut the drogue chutes for the sake of realism, otherwise it's clipping in through the strings of that. And we have splashed down with no recovery crew in sight, so we'll just hit the recover button and they'll come teleport across, and there we are back on Kerbin after a safe and very wasteful mission from fuel. And we have grabbed 3,305 science points from Duna and Ike respectively, which is quite a lot of science, which we can head over to the R&D center to research all our science stuff, our science nodes. So I have now decided that I should just get every single tier. So one tier is all the nodes that are in line with each other and of the same amount of science points. So I got up to tier 6 and then decided, well, I didn't have enough science, so now I have to choose carefully between the current tiers because they're pretty expensive, and we used most of our other science with the other 2 tiers, finishing them. So with that done, we've got all our lovely stuff. Please tell me in the comments below whether or not what planet you would like me to visit next. I'll link all the list of the planets below, and I'll leave you with an end screen. Now, center is a button to subscribe to my channel, left hand side is the link to the full playlist, and right hand side is a video chosen for you by YouTube's recommendation algorithm. Guys, thank you much for watching, goodbye.